thorn in the side of our useless government. Far-right thugs. Keir Starmer's line on what caused the summer riots, a tyrannical police state. People of Britain have had enough. Civil war is inevitable, killing free speech in this country. Kicking Keir Starmer all over the house on this one.
Hi everyone. So then, Elon Musk calls Britain a tyrannical police state. Very bold words, right? But here's a twist. He's not backing down with it either. Musk is going head to head with the UK government, accusing them of suppressing free speech and mismanaging their own chaos. And at the centre of it all, Labour leader Keir Starmer. Starmer blames social media X, formerly Twitter, for the Southport riots, calling it a breeding ground for unrest. But is it really the platform, or is this just scapegoat for deeper issues like immigration policies and growing public frustration? And let's not forget BBC Verify, our so-called guardians of truth, fumbling basic facts while conveniently ignoring the bigger question. Who's really pulling the strings in this narrative? Elon Musk, the man who built electric cars and rockets, is now fighting for your right, and not just the British people, the whole of Europe and the West in general, to speak freely on his platform. But is Musk a champion of freedom? Or is this just another billionaire power play? One thing's for sure, this isn't just about riots, social media or even politics. It's about who controls the narrative in a world where every word counts. So, whose side are you on?
I've been very much enjoying the ongoing dispute between Keir, two-tier Keir, and his cabinet crew, and the world's richest man, Elon Musk, who is emerging as a fantastic thorn in the side of our useless government. You know, he's been at war with them ever since the Southport riots, the summer riots, where Keir Starmer sought to blame the riots entirely on far-right thugs, and also the communication method by which they got together. So the Labour line, Keir Starmer's line on what caused the summer riots was Twitter, X. You know, it was the method of communication, which is like saying that the reason for the poll tax riots was the telephone, because the rioters rang each other and said, I'll meet you in Trafalgar Square. You can't blame a method of... You can't say that a method of communication is the cause of a riot, which I think is why Elon Musk is so upset with Keir Starmer. But he's now, you know, of course, the President-elect Donald Trump's first buddy. He's a very powerful man now. Only yesterday he called the UK a tyrannical police state. He said the people of Britain have had enough, and this was because we're calling for another election. We're not going to get it, but that was what that was a reference to. After Southport, he said civil war is inevitable, and he accuses two-tier Keir Starmer of killing free speech in this country. And when he was invited pompously by a bunch of two-bit British MPs on the House of Commons Science and Technology Committee, when he was pompously summoned to Parliament to explain himself, to testify on Twitter's alleged role in spreading disinformation, he said, no, I'll tell you what, I'm not coming there, but I'm summoning you to America to explain British censorship and you threatening American citizens. Now, he's not a stupid man. And frankly, he is kicking Keir Starmer all over the house on this one.
Yeah, and he's got a point in many, many ways. I mean, the sort of self-styled moral arbiters of information, the truth, is quite often coming from the mouths of representatives in government and also the likes of BBC Verify. And yet we know that that sometimes isn't the case. I mean, BBC Verify, for instance, quickly got rid of the line about how many farms would be affected by inheritance taxes. You know, and the governments do government things.
By the way, prior to that, James, you're a rural man and you'll understand this. BBC Verify, in one of its great fact-checking exercises, didn't realise that there was a difference between hectares and acres. So BBC Verify is a waste of space, a waste of time, and a waste of licence fee payer money.
But that's the whole point. We're paying for them to behave like this. And what right do they have to decide what is truth and what's fiction? This comes back to Musk again. And I think Musk is enjoying himself right now. I mean, he's obviously got, more power. He's got a lot of skin in the game in terms of influence with Trump. But ultimately, no social media platform is perfect. There's a lot of rubbish on every platform. But what Musk has largely done is he's kept that sort of town square appeal to X. And there is that freedom of speech. And meanwhile, and I think it's hilarious, as someone who actually came from the left, but a lot of aspects of the left have left me, so I don't know where I am right now. But anyway, a lot of people on the left have taken umbrage with this, and they've scuttled off X. And they're going on to, what is it, Blue Sky or something like that?
Blue Sky, yeah.
To indulge in their Mobius loop of an echo chamber where they can get their safe space of warm and fuzzy woke opinions. Instead of actually doing what most grown-ups do you know what? We've got different opinions. Let's have a squabble about it. Let's have an argument about it, but respectfully. And actually, we might find some common ground because we might learn from each other. I saw a really good clip the other day of William Hague and John Prescott, when John Prescott was announcing his retirement. It was in the House of Commons. It was like a farewell speech, and they were jousting with each other. I think William Hague actually put it up on his feed.
Yeah.
And it was a reminder that political opponents can have, they can fight tooth and nail for what they believe in, but with a bit of humour and a bit of wit, and also some understanding about what they're talking about. So what we've got is a discourse politically that's massively diminished over the last 20 years. And the vacuum in some ways has been filled by social media. But I think part of that is people should accept that people have differences of opinions. And sometimes elections are won by the other side. That doesn't mean you have to try and cancel them or run away from it. What you should do is have a debate with them. Yeah. And I think Musk is trying ultimately to do that. And that is why he's going after the British government, because there's lots of aspects within the British government right now that are wanting to shut down aspects of debate or frame debate. Like Southport's a perfect example, accusing people who are not of being far right or xenophobic. The immigration debate is a perfect example of this. It's perfectly, eminently feasible to have a problem with the amount of money we're spaffing away on hotels every day, combined with what's happening in the Channel, combined with the fact that 1.9 million net migration over the 3 years isn't particularly sustainable. That does not mean you're a xenophobe. It does not mean that you're a racist. And this is where we've got to in this debate right now. And I think Musk has recognised that. He wants people from all sides to have a fair debate.
Absolutely. And this is Starmer's technique. I mean, what he said about the summer riots, I had to stress, nobody condones what happened in those riots. Nobody condones throwing bricks at the cops, trying to set fire to mosques and hotels, all terrible. The punishments handed out to the participants, particularly those who weren't even there but put some hurty words on Facebook, were grotesquely disproportionate and suspiciously swift. This was clearly justice as ordered by the political prime minister. So those people were in court within 5 or 6 days, in jail within 7 of their offences. Other people are waiting 2 years to get to court. So that was strange in itself. And then, so Starmer and the gang, he kept saying, this is not protest, this is not protest. It is protest. It's not a very nice form of protest. That was a protest against immigration. That was a protest against our migrant crisis. That's what it was. And then Starmer, this is what he does. He closes down sensible debate by putting forward an argument that is nonsensical and just will not budge from that. So he said that the cause of the riots was X, was Twitter, was social media, were people connecting with each other. That was the way they communicated. That was not the cause. And yet he will not hear any dissent from his viewpoint. And that, I think, is why Elon Musk is furious with him, because it is absolutely absurd to say that a method of communication causes a riot.
Yeah, well, they're doing it again with even this petition. I mean, I'm seeing some of the stuff. I mean, Starmer alluded to it today or yesterday, and there's some of his sort of alaka-doos on the left who are now trumpeting this sort of line that somehow it's been infiltrated by dark money from Russia or Nigel Farage or Donald Trump, and there's loads of bots. No. I read something the other day in terms of the protest. Most of the petitions are actually from signatures in the UK, almost all of them. And so it's just people who are miffed with the government. And what happens with government, you're completely right, Kevin, is when something goes against them, there's a narrative of protest elsewhere, and I suspect, and mark my words, there'll be plenty others over the next 3 years, he will try and reframe it in the same ways.
Yeah.
And therefore, the problem and the worry I've got with that is the outcome that he then mandates, whereby our right to protest, our right to free speech might be up for grabs with some restrictions and clampdowns. We have to stand against that because everyone has the right to freedom of speech, expression and protest. And if you behave badly or you break the law, then of course there's consequences.
Yeah. And I've got to say this,
Jay.
I've got to say this as well. No one in this country, but no one, should be sent to jail for writing nasty words on social media. People getting 2 and 3 years for putting silly posts on Facebook. That's grotesque. It's not British, and Starmer should stop doing this. You know, with his attitude to the petition, by the way, I thought it was a window into his factionalist little tortured psyche. So he went on to This Morning, you know, that well-known forum for tough political interrogation and debate, to be grilled within an inch of his life by those political heavyweights, Andy Peters and Kat Deely. Basically he dismissed it. They said, what about this petition? He's dismissed it in these words. Well, this is people who don't vote Labour, isn't it? You know, I mean, obviously, I would expect pushback from them. This is the way he sees the world. All opposition is people who don't vote Labour. Why is he hard on old people? Because they don't vote Labour. Why is he having a go at farmers? Because they don't vote Labour. Why doesn't he like rural communities? Because they don't vote Labour. And so on and so forth. He's a factionalist. He's a tribalist. He's from the Labour tribe, and he sees enemies everywhere. And that's what he thinks about this petition. It's all non-Labour voters. Not true, mate. Not true.
That's the thing. That side as well, they're always going on about far-right conspiracy theorists and the rest of it. But sometimes quite often the way that they behave is that they are the conspiracists. I mean, sometimes they behave like a bunch of cranks in terms of who the opposition is. And as you said, they sort of dismiss and smear and shut down anyone who doesn't think like them. I mean, one of the aspects with that law is that if someone agrees with them on everything and it takes one different opinion, then they must be purged. And Starmer's got that with it's authoritarianism, and actually he doesn't have the will of the people on his side. You know, it was a loaned vote. It wasn't a vote of love for the Labour government. It was because the Tories were in such a mess and people were sick of them. And even their share of the vote wasn't particularly high. It was just a set of circumstances with Reform and the Tories splitting the vote, and Labour came through with a lot of small majorities. Yeah. So their government is built on a house of sand. And if Starmer continues like this, they're going to be completely demolished in local elections, and they're going to be demolished in by-elections, and ultimately the general election. And it's not just about the bad policies. It's about his mentality, that pole-faced, sanctimonious mentality that he has, where he's treating the nation like a bunch of naughty school children and punishing people who don't vote for him, like pensioners, students. I cannot even believe that a Labour government would punish pensioners and students. No Labour government would ever have done that before, but this individual and his government don't care. Yep. It's all about punishing people who don't think like them.
Yes, indeed. And going back to Southport, if there was disinformation swirling around, and I'm sure there was, we pretty much now know that some of that disinformation was coming from the authorities. You know, we weren't exactly put in the picture about the nature of the suspect, were we? All of this information kind of trickled out much later. So when they're getting all high and mighty about, Elon Musk and Twitter, they spread disinformation. Well, so did the authorities, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and there's been many examples of that. There was quite a lot, even going back to the previous government, linked in with some of the media outlets, like the BBC in particular on this, with some of the misinformation that was spread over the response of COVID.
Yeah.
A lot of that was proven over time to be misinformation. And yet anyone who questioned it back then were smeared as being COVID idiots or anti-vaxxers or whatever it might be. It's the same playbook over and over again. Some opposition to our government right now, what happens is that opposition gets smeared and they get called names. I don't really care about the names, but they try and undermine the credibility of any opposition to the point that they're almost looking for protesters, even one protester on a particular march, to kick off, to frame it in a particular direction. If you look at the farmers one, perfect example, in London, there must have been about 40 or 50,000 protesters there. I was there. It was more than what the government, the BBC were claiming, a few hundred up to 10,000.
Yeah, I think it was 20 to 30 at least. Everybody says so.
It was, Whitehall was full, but also there was no trouble.
Yeah,
and that was credit to the farmers. And actually, a lot of the protests are exactly the same. But we've got a government right now that's literally vindictive on anyone or any community or any business group that doesn't think exactly like that. And that is a dangerous place to be for our freedoms in society.
You're right. They're at war with anyone who doesn't agree with them and anyone who doesn't vote for them. And also, I think this government, let's think about the Manchester airport cop beating. They need to think about this strange silence that falls over any incident as soon as the spectre of Islam arrives. As soon as Islam is involved, there's a suggestion Islam's got something to do with it. The public are treated like children and kept in the dark. And they need to think about this as well. They've got to stop treating us like kids. They really do.